So I'm going to pull up my Postman really quick because originally um, I was using Postman and I was just doing a regular get request to fetch all the biographies. And you see, when you do that get request, you have all the regular parts of the data, the name, the credential, the bio, anything that's just plain text or plain Boolean is in there, but none of the media is in there. There's no pictures. You can see there it goes from doc 1 to doc 3. There's no media in there, and there's none of those dynamic zones that I was using to list the specialties and the experiences in the biographies. So then I had to do a little bit of research and discovered that you need to include an extra parameter in here. That is the populate with a wildcard, so that when you request the data, it populates everything, including the media here. And down below that, you'll see that dynamic zone in there, which is an array with objects within it. So anything more complicated than a simple text, number, Boolean, you need to include that populate parameter in your GET request. So one thing I want to point out here, this is really cool. Strapi includes a thumbnail option in their formats for their pictures, which I took advantage of in that thumbnail listing on that main page. It's just a smaller version, so we're not tossing quite so much data around. And then I use the regular version of the picture on the full bio page. Okay, so that's what's going on there with the fetch requests. And so you'll see in my code, when I used my use effect, I needed to include that. And that worked out just fine on this page. It returned everything, went down here, created a nice little doctor image with the title and credential underneath it. And I needed to map it out, obviously, but I also needed to filter it to make sure that there was that top feature included. So I included a map embedded within a filter. So first, the JavaScript filters out for only the ones who are on the top feature, and then it maps them out to create all those nice little pictures across the page. And then on the lower biographies, obviously the only difference, literally the only difference, is that that top feature is false instead of true. So that's a basic gist of how the biography components work. Now, once you click on them, I've embedded them in a link that goes to that biographies with the biography ID that I showed you earlier in the React Router DOM, in the router on the app.js component. And that leads you to a component that is called Doctor Info Cards, because originally we thought that this was going to be a pop-up card before the designer was like, no, we really want it to go to its own page. And I ended up calling this parameter Everest because it was so frustrating to figure out how to get it to work. So I believe the issue here is that once you put this populate parameter in, there's not really an easy way to call the data using the single number. I mean, I can do it in Postman. When I go into Postman, I was able to just add in the number there, populate, send, and I would get back a single doctor with all the stuff I needed. But I couldn't seem to get it to do it in here, and I never did figure out why. So what I ended up doing is I took this Everest parameter and I did another map embedded in a filter where I was mapping out the biography to include the picture and all of the stuff this time, including the credentials and the experience. So it was the full page thing. And I embedded it in a filter that made sure that the biography of the doctor would match the ID of the page. And interestingly, I couldn't use, well, I can go back and do this. I need to convert one of those to a number because one of those ended up being one of them ended up being a string and the other one was a number, and I couldn't figure out why, or yeah. So I can go back and fix that, but for right now it's the double equals. And so that's how I ended up doing that. And the end result you can see is when you click on that, it goes to the main thing. And that is the overview of this component with our full stack of Strapi and React.